To be honest, we're in the process of updating our forecasts at the moment, so I can't give any precise figures. But I would expect the economy to grow in the region of around 4 to 5% this year, given the rather low base provided by 2020, and probably by around 4% in 2022, assuming the current kind of tight monetary stance that we're seeing is maintained. You're absolutely right to say that, our forecasts over the past year, we've changed them progressively. From starting the beginning of 2020, we had to downgrade them hugely with the impact of coronavirus. And then, of course, as the year progressed, we've slowly been upgrading them again. But I think generally speaking, it's true that Turkey has quite a resilient economy and recovery from shocks tends to be quite quick. This is something we saw in 2009 following the global financial crisis, and also in 2016 following the coup attempt. And certainly we saw the same thing last year. The economy bounced back quickly from the coronavirus shock, which had seen the economy contract by almost 10% in the second quarter. So it was a very severe shock. But the bounce back was largely thanks to the extensive monetary stimulus that was applied. Turkey was, of course, one of the very few countries in the world to record positive growth for the year as a whole. So it, as you say, it did rather well. But this recovery did come at a cost in terms of macroeconomic stability, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. The extensive use of the central bank's reserves to support the lira in the face of what I would consider to be too loose monetary policy certainly increased the vulnerability of the economy. I think this sort of shift to what I would call a more orthodox policy stance has certainly been welcome. The credibility of the central bank needed to be rebuilt, and Governor Akbar has certainly taken the right steps to do this. Basically, in terms of hiking policy rates, increasing transparency by shifting back to providing funds at a single policy rate rather than using a corridor, and improving communication and forward guidance in order to try and basically anchor inflation expectations. Of course, it's widely recognized that it's going to take time to re-establish credibility. It doesn't happen overnight. And the central bank's been very keen to send the message that policy will remain tight until inflation returns to target. Turkey's always had strong fundamentals, which makes it an attractive place to invest. But of course, in recent years, a big challenge for investors has been the relatively unpredictable policy environment, which we've seen this manifesting itself in high rates of inflation and a volatile exchange rate, which are all things that investors get a little bit nervous about. Now, if the shift to a more orthodox policy environment that we've seen since November is perceived to be something that's going to be sustained, then the prospects for investors in Turkey will be very good, I think. I should probably start by adding something of a caveat. I'm not an expert in the methodologies used by rating agencies to rate countries, but I think it stands to reason that, if Turkey can sustain this orthodox policy environment and at the same time undertake structural reforms that result in a shift away from depending on credit-driven consumption for growth, which we've seen for the past few years, and shift towards more sustainable sources of growth, then the underlying macroeconomic vulnerabilities that have resulted in periodic crises would reduce. I do know that rating agencies tend to be rather asymmetric in their approach to rating countries. So it's much harder to have your rating increase than it is to lose your rating. So it's positive that we've seen these actions taken by Fitch and Moody's so far. So hopefully we'll